the Manchester Board of Selectmen to order. Can we quiet down, please, so we can start our meeting? Thank you. We have a couple of announcements tonight and a couple of guests that we want to start off with. But first piece, I want to thank everybody and the planning board in particular. Last week, the master plan for our town was approved by the planning board. It's very exciting. We'll be moving forward with that implementation. A lot of hard work by a lot of people over the last 4 years. We'll do some recognition of that later on, but I did want to mark the event and say that that has been completed, which is great. As you know, we had a last-minute announcement on Friday. Our police chief sadly is moving on to Gloucester. We wish him the best. We will sorely miss him. He was a wonderful addition to our community and did a great job for us. We'll be talking a little bit more going forward about what we're doing, but I think in general, the plan is to look at an interim position for right now because he begins in April 1st, I think. So we'll be working through that process over the course of the next couple of weeks in advance of the beginning of April to look at our interim opportunities, and probably we'll discuss that in our next meeting going forward. The last piece that I want to talk about, we did receive 3 pieces of information that came in late in the day, just as added correspondence. I just wanted to acknowledge that notes from Laura Tenney, Jeffrey Barham, and Christine DeLacio will be included in our record and will be brought forward as we talk about those topics. So without further ado, I'm going to start with a community open comments because we have 2 guests from our high school here who have some information to share with us. Once they're completed, I'm happy to take any other comments, and then we'll move through our agenda. Okay? Please introduce yourselves.
I'm Kenny.
Yeah, it just,
That's
it
fine.
just
That's
talks,
fine.
yep.
I'm Will Kenny, and I'm Joseph. So we're members of the green team at Manchester Essex, and we're planning on removing a bunch of invasives from Lobster Cove. And we're going to expand the project, but this is just a small start. So Phragmites are the target species, and they're like they pretty much eliminate all the natural marsh vegetation around them. So it's really bad in our area. Yeah. So we're working with DeRosa Environmental, and we're gonna get a bunch of students from Manchester Essex. We're gonna set up a volunteer page, so students can volunteer, get volunteer hours for removing the Phragmites. It should take. It's a multiple year process because you have to return to the site to get rid of any stragglers still there. So first we just remove them with these kind of axe things called grub hose, and then we're going to use a natural herbicide, and it's organic, and you pretty much you apply it to where you remove it from the roots so it doesn't spread to any other plants around it, and it's citrus based, so it's pretty much totally foolproof. Any questions? Yeah, it's up high on Gloucester Cove, so it's like next to the woods kind of. Phragmites don't do very well in salt water. They're like so you know those like long kind of stocky things. They look like a wheat almost.
Like cattails. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're,
People
they're
call
kind of
them
like
cattails.
cattails. Here's a picture of them. Yeah, the specific site where we're working doesn't have any bird populations in it. Yeah, it's pretty small. It's like the size of all these chairs together. It's just a small site, but the other thing we're focusing on is called knotweed, Japanese knotweed, which is another invasive, and that's kind of along the road because it likes to grow near infrastructure. And we're going to approach the same kind of plan with that, like using grub hose and single application of the natural herbicide.
So are you early in the process right now of putting the team together that will be doing this work?
Yeah,
Okay. So when do you think you'll have your group and you'll start your,
probably like mid-March when like the snow's gone, hopefully,
Yeah.
so we can actually.
to get in there and get that going? Would you be willing to come back and give a report back to us?
Yes, for sure.
Once you kind of got your group together and started your process, and let's make sure we get them on the agenda so we can make sure that we have more time to spend with you on it. That'd be great.
And you've also been to the Conservation
We've been to
Commission,
the
right?
Conservation
So they're
Commission.
aware of what you're doing.
And we've gotten approved by them, yes.
Okay, good.
Great. Thank you
All right,
very
well, that's
much.
Thank you.
nice. Thank you very much for your time. Take care. Okay, yes, thank you.
That stuff.
Yep, open up for public comment, yes? Sorry.
Sonia's gonna have to.
Here, I can.
Oh, Ben, yeah.
Right here, Andy Harris, 26 Tappan Street. I am so delighted to hear what Manchester and Essex are doing together in the school. It's a wonderful program, and both towns benefit. It's doing smart things, which is not necessarily what happens with two towns. So I'm just that comment that I'm cheering.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, anything else? Okay. Yes? Could you just go on your, no, we have to record for the TV. Yes, thank you. Yes, please, thank you, Katerina.
I know that we have one of your subjects tonight on school, and there are some other trees that I thought maybe I should tell you that the town should maybe pay attention to
Okay,
time when it comes.
yes, that would be great. When we open up for the public hearing, we'll be happy to take your comments. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, great. All right, our first order of business tonight is the Manchester Bath and Tennis change in manager. Greg, do you have that paperwork?
So, pretty straightforward, requesting a change in manager, and I believe the paperwork was in your packages. So everything appears to be in order. Don't know if we have the people here, no?
Anybody have it? Okay. All right, I noticed they have the tip certification, everything is here. Anything else on, any questions for anybody on that? Okay, I'll take a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve, do you say your name, Hollindra Barabee, Barabee, as the manager at the Manchester Bath and Tennis.
I'll second.
I need to recuse, I'm a member.
Okay. All right, so all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And Becky refuses. Okay. All right, we are due to start a public hearing in 3 minutes. So rather than start with our review of the warrant, we're gonna do our public hearing first. And then we'll move on to, I think our, intersection improvement, and we'll put probably the warrant for the town meeting right after that, or right before that. We'll figure that. But for right now, we're so close to 6:45, I don't want to start a discussion about the warrant for 3 minutes, and so we'll do that. I think at this point, we can probably open the public hearing, just making sure that we have it in enough time frame. So I'll take a motion to open the public hearing, request for public tree removal at the intersection of Bell Court and School Street. That's it.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Greg, do you want to set us up on that?
Sure, so there's a large red maple at the corner of the street there, of Bell Court and Summer. The tree has been problematic in terms of what the roots getting into the sewer line primarily, to the point of it was clogging. It's been responsible for clogging the line a number of times. The town, in cooperation with the homeowners along Bell Court, did replace the entire line. DPW is very concerned that this tree will continue to wreak havoc on the line. So they are requesting that you give permission for its removal.
Okay.
So I know Tom Henderson is here as
Oh, great.
tree warden and can comment.
Can we- Just sorry.
Speak pretty loud, but I'll take it for you.
That's okay, thank you.
Yes, I did look at the tree. It's a large, healthy, mature, red swamp maple, maybe a cultivar of the native variety. This is the issue with urban trees like that that have aggressive root systems. In the old type joints, they do get in and invade and cause problems, as Greg has said, and I hate to lose a beautiful, healthy, mature tree, particularly in that location, but this is the issue we face with these trees when they get like that. It is known for its aggressive root system, fibrous, and it's, I always try to save every tree. Perhaps we could put something smaller, maybe a flowering tree. I like to replace a tree every time we lose a tree, and unfortunately, I agree with the DPW and the issues they have with it, but I also am sentimental about losing a tree like that. So that's the best I can tell you, my opinion. If the neighbors really have no objection, and I know the community in certain issues will have, objections to it, but that's part of dealing with these trees when they get to that state. And there's really nothing you can do. People talk about root pruning and this stuff. It really doesn't work. It's a temporary fix, and it'll probably be an ongoing issue for the town and expense. Thank you.
Is there anyone here from the neighborhood or homeowners? Have we contacted and been in touch with them?
Yes.
And what is their?
So there was some correspondence. They didn't respond back from the last time. Okay, and the DPW corresponded with them.
Mhm.
They were just asking some more details as to why, and
Yeah.
they did not respond back.
Okay. So they were aware that this was happening. Okay. Any other comments specific to this tree in this discussion right now? Okay. All right, board.
Well, I agree with Tom. You hate to take a healthy tree down, but we've replaced and done a lot of work with those lines, and we don't want to be back up there again in 5, 8, 10 years, or at another juncture of lines that the roots may be causing problems with. So I reluctantly would be okay taking it down with the proviso that something else goes in there.
Yeah, then it's replaced.
Yep.
Okay. Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, I feel the same way.
It just goes against, I mean, we've got a beautiful tree, we're losing trees a lot, and I wanted to ask about the joints. He was saying with the old style joints it makes problems. Are there different kinds of joints now, or is the construction of the pipes, is that different, that they are not as affected? So if we were to prune this time, do we have different construction that wouldn't be impacted?
So I mean, the pipes, the newer pipe is certainly more resistant, but over time it's going to get in there.
What is the life of the pipe without?
Life of the pipe?
Yeah.
Oh, it's 75 years.
I reluctantly agree.
Okay. Any other comments on this tree in particular? Okay. Yes, Andy?
26 Tappan Street. Those trees that we're talking about are all invasives. So, throwing money after invasives, other than trying to get rid of them, is us throwing money away.
Thanks, Andy. Okay. All right. Without any further comments, I'll close the public hearing on this so we can take a vote. I'll have a motion to close the public hearing, please.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So I'll take a motion for the removal of the tree with the replacement.
With a replacement.
With the replacement.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Reluctantly in favor? Aye, okay. Ms. Skates, I do want to just take your comment quickly about the trees, because I didn't want to do it in the public hearing, but if you have something to add. Yes, you do, yeah. Yeah.
I came tonight knowing that this is going to be discussed about that tree particularly, but also that Mr. Henderson, who is the tree warden, will be here, and also the president of the Friends of the Trees, that's next to me. So I know there are a lot of people who are concerned and care really in this town about trees. I love trees, I love flowers, I love everything green, but this town has trees that they're having large roots. They're near power lines, gas lines, and everybody forgets the gas lines. We had a spruce in front of our house that was beautiful when we bought our house. They planted it there the previous owners when it was like a Christmas tree, and it grew and grew and grew. And one time when the time was that the people would come from gas to measure your meter, they told us that the roots were getting probably too big, and the pipes were about 5 feet away from the gas line. So it would be nice if we can cut the tree, because with a big strong wind and so on, not only the tree will fall, but everything can be blown up in the neighborhood. And so we chose to cut it. I love the tree before we had it. There are a lot of trees in town on School Street and other trees in other areas that they hang over the street. They are right on the borderline of neighbors and the sidewalk. They're less and less trees from the sidewalk, but some of them that they're on the side of the neighbors, some of the neighbors claim is not theirs, is belonging to the town. We have a tree on School Street that is a neighbor of our property, one of our properties there. And recently, we had to cut branches that came over the lines, because nobody would take responsibility of cutting the tree branches over the lines. So the
are
neighbor
you-
said it's not her tree. The
Mm.
town says it's her tree.
Are
There
you
other
looking
trees.
for specific trees that
That
you'd like to be
tree
addressed?
is on 30 School property and north corner.
Okay, if
The
I
pine
could,
tree, over.
okay,
The next one that I'm concerned about is an old tree, talking about the old trees at school, across from the Catholic Church on the corner of Vine and School. It's a
Okay.
very old tree, and at some point it had an orange ribbon on it
okay.
last year, but I have no idea what happened after that.
Can I ask a huge favor? Would you be willing to go and talk with Greg after the meeting, our town administrator? Give him
Sure.
the list of the trees that you're
Yes,
interested
because
in
I'm a
talking
walker
about.
and I notice all the trees.
Well, and that's why I think it would be more useful if we had the list.
Okay.
He can look into it. We can have DPW look at it. We're happy to address it on an
Okay.
agenda item, but just for
Right,
tonight,
I
that would be
understand
really
it,
helpful.
I understand it. I
Okay.
thought that was just,
Yeah.
you know.
No, I
bring it
appreciate you
up.
coming in, though. Thank you
Okay,
very
thank
much.
you.
Okay, thanks. Okay. So Greg, make sure we follow up with Ms. Skates. Thanks. All right. We are going to, I think this makes sense to talk about our complete streets next.
Yeah.
And then we'll jump to our
We
warrant
can see.
after that, if
Yep.
that makes sense for everybody. So, let me just move on with that. Okay, so, Greg, do you want to tee us up for that? You've got something. Do you want to come forward and say this? Thank you.
So this is a follow-up from your last meeting. We had our consultant, Trish, from VHB, to give an overview of the intersections. And this is not just to repeat, a little more in-depth for that, give people more of an opportunity to present their comments to you. I think you see this as a listening session for comments. No decisions need to be made this evening. We will continue to work on the design. We'll continue to get cost estimates and bid proposals from contractors, and then at some time, probably in April, is when the final set decision will be needed.
No, that's
Sure.
great.
Hi, my name is Trish Domigan. I work at the design consulting firm of VHB. I came and presented this a shorter presentation, was it last week or the week before? I don't
2 weeks
remember
ago,
now. 2
yeah.
weeks ago. To talk about 3 locations, actually 4, of where there's going to be sidewalk improvements as part of the Complete Streets project. So this is just a presentation. It's a little bit longer. There's a few more options that are considered for the sidewalk improvements at these areas. So just to give a little bit of summary of the project up to this point, in 2017, there was a prioritization plan for Complete Streets projects that was completed by subcommittee, I think, by the town. There were 18 pedestrian and cycling improvement projects that were identified town-wide. In 2017, in the fall, the town applied for construction funding through Mass DOT as a Tier 3 project for some of the 18 projects that were identified, and there were 4 locations that had gotten approved for construction funding through Mass DOT. Thank you, sir. This is just the prioritization plan that had been completed in 2017. This is just a picture of them. And there's 18 projects that were identified on there. So the projects that we're talking about tonight are Beach Street at Union Street, which there was about $27,000 approved for construction through Mass DOT, Central at Union at School, Washington Summer at C Street, and then Beach Street. There was a separated shared use path that had been suggested on Beach Street. That's $144,000. This is just a summary of the description of each of the projects that had been submitted to Mass DOT. So it was recognized that there are limited parking spaces at this intersection at Central Union at School Street. There were 13 crashes, vehicular crashes there since 2014, which is a pretty high rate. Some of the improved suggestions was improvement to traffic control, and traffic control means stop signs and pavement markings, things like that. Improved pedestrian visibility, and reduce crosswalk lengths. This is just an aerial. It's from Bing of the intersection, and I think what the improvements included the crosswalk lengths, not only on Union Street but on Central Street, the geometry of School Street, and it was recognized that there are limited parking spaces along each side of the roadway. You guys want to get a better view? So as part of the prioritization plan, there were concepts developed, and I apologize for the graphics, but this was a concept that was put into the prioritization plan that had been submitted to Mass DOT. Some of the improvements were to repair and change some of the geometry of the sidewalk area along School Street on both sides, on Central Street, and also on Union Street right in front of Town Hall. There was reversed angled parking that had been suggested, because if you extend out the sidewalk here, you'll be removing the parking spaces that are along the sidewalk area, and reversed angled parking had been suggested as part of the prioritization plan. VHB took a look at it, and we came up with a few other alternatives from what had been submitted to Mass DOT on the same theme, essentially, but just modifications, just to take a look at what could be what could happen to still meet the same goals of the project. The sidewalk on School Street was reconstructed on both sides of the roadway, and what that would do, it's not just to improve the sidewalk and the pedestrian pathway along the sidewalk, but it would also introduce wheelchair ramps on all sides of the intersection. But what it also does is it changes the geometry slightly of the roadway of Union Street going into the intersection. One of the things that we've noticed is that especially trucks moving from Union Street going onto School Street run over the sidewalk area. And if you actually just put this little curve in here and define the alignment of the roadway, it actually makes people turn towards Central Street and then make the turn onto School Street. So it's actually an easier movement to make. The crosswalks would be shorter. There would be wheelchair ramps, as I had mentioned, and there would be extended sidewalks on all sides of the intersection. And what that would do is that would improve visibility for people who are walking and want to cross the street. What this will do is it'll bring them out to, if you can see, this is the parking lane here, and it would bring the pedestrian out to the edge of the parking lane. So when you're crossing the street, you won't be crossing from behind a car and getting into the travelway. People on the street would be able to see you, and you'll be able to see the motorists that are driving on the roadway. Stop lines, the stop line on School Street would be extended further closer to the intersection. One of the problems that's out there right now is that the stop line is a little bit further back, so people don't actually stop at the stop line. They creep into the intersection to see around the building that's right at the intersection. I could go on and on about this location. Some of the pavement markings that are out there right now would be removed. New pavement markings. There would be more definition of the roadway itself. Next slide, please. This is another alternative. So the previous alternative had two crosswalks that were crossing over, one at Union Street and one at Central Street. And what this does is it eliminates one of them. And what we're trying to do is increase the number of parking spaces that remain. Understanding that parking at this location is limited, people are concerned about removing the parking spaces. What we're trying to do is just save as many parking spaces as there is. So what this does is actually eliminates the amount of widened sidewalk area on this side of the roadway, and that way you can save another space here. Thank you, sir. This alternative was also looked at. So this completely reduces the amount of widened sidewalk area on the town hall side of Central Street. And what that will do is it increases the number of parking spaces along this side, so it pretty much keeps what's out there right now. The parking over here, there's a number of parking spaces that will be saved, and there'll be pavement markings that will be included along here also. So I'm not sure if you guys can see this, but this is a graphic that we had put together that just shows the number of parking spaces that are out there. The red blocks that are in here are the number of parking spaces that are out there right now. And I want to note that these parking spaces, even though they're out there, if you look at federal standards, they don't comply with federal standards. So what we call them is illegal parking spaces because they're within an intersection. So there's a number of parking spaces that are out there and people are parking in them, but technically if we were to follow federal rules and regulations, they do not comply with federal, they're not legal parking spaces. What this also shows is that there'll be 2 new parking spaces put on Central Street where the crosswalk is right now, where there is not any parking spaces right now. So right now there's a parking space here on School Street, on Union Street. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 parking spaces that would be removed, and this one 2 would be added. So there would be 7 parking spaces removed at this intersection for this alternative. Again, no, this is entirely to get feedback from the folks here. It's not, we came up with designs. These designs are based on standards that we're using right now. They're, the objective of the Complete Streets program is to increase pedestrian visibility, make it safer for people not in cars to cross over intersections like this. So what we're doing is just looking at the goals of what the objectives are and then putting in design. So I'm just here to present them to you and get feedback from you.
Can I just make a procedural point here? Can we just have
I have a lot of
presentation,
slides.
and then I'm happy to come back, because what will happen is, and then we can go through the identification and all that. Thank you. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I do have a lot of slides.
Yeah, and
Right. Oh, sorry. Okay,
That's
I'll keep going. This is the second alternative. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 parking spaces lost and 2 added here. And then the third one is these 3 here. There's 1 here that's really not legal, and then the 2 added here. So there's 4 parking spaces lost and 2 added here. And I'll whip through these real fast. So these are what we look at in terms of placing crosswalks. What this is, it's called stopping sight distance. So these are some of the design tools we use to actually place crosswalks so that there's stopping sight distance between the person when they see someone in the crosswalk and the length between that point and the person at the crosswalk, so people can safely stop when people are crossing the roadway. And this just shows that alternative one meets the stopping sight distance for, and I'm not going to get into this the nuances, but for a 30-mile-per-hour design speed. I know the posted speed limit here is 20, but the design of the roadway should be based on the design speed, which is different than the posted speed. Alternative 2 meets also, so even with one crosswalk here, it still meets the stopping sight distance criteria. Alternative 3, we would have to change the geometry on this side of the road. I don't know if you can see this, but this is a hashed out area where there's parking right now, and because that's hashed out, people that are in the vehicles looking at this crosswalk can't see because there will be cars parked there, so they wouldn't be able to see the people crossing at the crosswalk. I'm just going to the next intersection, then we'll hop back about additional opportunities for parking spaces. So at Beach Street, at Union Street, the summary is this was included in the DIP project phase 2 plans. There were 2 auto ped crashes, so there were 2 pedestrian crashes at this location and 5 auto crashes since 2014. The objective is to improve visibility, both pedestrian and vehicular, improve pedestrian accessibility and safety. So the improvements here are to have a widened out sidewalk area on Union Street and also better define the intersection. What this would do is to shorten up the crosswalk areas, install wheelchair ramps, put the stop bar a little bit closer to the intersection so people stopping here will be able to see folks that are crossing through the intersection. The number of spaces lost would be 3 here, and there would be 1 added on. And again, the sight distance here is in accordance to federal, the 30-mile-per-hour design speed, and it still meets. So the crosswalks here are placed accordingly. There were a couple other parking options when I spoke with Greg earlier this week that he suggested. One is that the town hall green is being reconfigured, and there may be opportunities to bring that curb line back. So in that alternative where I said that the sight distance is going through the cars, there may be an opportunity to bring the curb line back enough so that you can still continue to have those parking spaces and still have the sight distance that are required. 2 new spaces would be in front of the library. There was a tree that had been removed recently, and it seems like there would be an opportunity to use that space as 2 parking spaces. So there's opportunities here to improve the condition along Town Hall, plus add 2 new spaces at the library. And then there's 3 new spaces on Upper Union beyond the stop line that could be done if the parking was put on the opposite side of the street. And that would be due to the number of curb cuts are less on that side of the street than what's on there right now, on the side that the parking is on right now. So at Washington Street, Summer Street, and C Street, the running speed, so the people are speeding through the intersection. The objective of this project would be to reduce vehicular speeds, improve vehicular and pedestrian visibility, safety for pedestrians and cyclists, accessibility, and install wheelchair ramps, and eliminate traffics from C Street that are shooting across the intersection and going directly on Washington Street. So the improvements here would be keep C Street 2-way, put in a crosswalk right at the intersection of C Street with Summer Street, extend out the sidewalk area on Washington Street so people can't just shoot across here. They would have to go onto Summer Street and then get up Washington Street. There would be a flashing beacon that would be put on the crosswalk here. This is the first alternative that we took a look at. So the folks that are coming on Summer Street, there would be a flashing beacon for people that are crossing over Summer Street a little bit further down from the intersection. We also looked at another alternative that would remove, everything would stay the same, the widened out sidewalk area on Washington Street. We removed the crosswalk down gradient from the intersection and put it right at the crest of the hill that's at the intersection. And the reason why that would be an improvement is because from a sight distance, from a visibility perspective, it's at the top of the crest, so people could actually see people crossing there. Again, do improvements, my pointer's dying, do improvements to the sidewalk area on both sides of C Street. And I'll go super quick on this one. So Beach Street, there was originally, as part of the prioritization plan, there was a shared use path that had been suggested from essentially the railroad tracks where the railroad crosses over Beach Street all the way up to Singing Beach. There were 7 crashes there since 2014. What had been suggested would be a 10-foot wide sidewalk that would be constructed on the east side of the roadway all the way to the beach from the train station. And when we took a look at it, with all of the different features out there and the constraints, it would cost a little bit over what the grant amount was. So it would be about $500,000 that we estimated to put in this widened sidewalk area. So we took a look at different options that we could consider for the amount that the grant was awarded for, and we could put a 10-foot wide sidewalk from Masco Street to the beach, which would be $144,000. We were also asked to take a look at installing an upgraded sidewalk, just replacing what's out there right now from the train tracks, and we're in the process of doing that all the way to the beach. And these graphics are just showing what it would look like. This is the area that would be, it's within the right-of-way. This would be the area that the widened out sidewalk would be. It would go from Masco Street to the beach. There are some pruning that would be required. There's a lot of vegetation on this side of the roadway, and there's a few encroachments. So there's gates and there's some private features that would have to get relocated if this was to move ahead with design. This just shows the end of it where the trail or the widened out sidewalk would end at the parking area. There's a place, an opportunity to put bike racks so that people can safely store their bikes and go to the beach. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
Okay. Before we get opening to the public piece, any specific questions from the board on this?
Yep. I had one, you mentioned the possibility of putting a couple spots back in front of the library. Is that narrowing that section of sidewalk at the same time?
The location where the tree is, which had been removed, the sidewalk, you could actually put in like a cutout into the sidewalk area to allow parking there without encroaching on the travel lane.
Okay.
So you could shift it over so that it's outside of the travel lane.
And I think one of my other thoughts was turning radius on the school central union for the ladder truck. Has that been looked at?
When we
confirmed?
configured these designs, we looked at the maximum vehicle that would be using that intersection. So yes, that was looked at.
Okay.
It wouldn't stay within its own travel lane. It's just
Well,
too
right.
narrow.
Right.
It would use the entire roadway, but it would be able to make that movement.
Anything at this point, Elon? Any questions?
Nope. I asked my questions before, so I'm up to speed.
I just wanted to clarify a point. You were talking about, well, before we go off of this one, the crushed, the pipe that keeps getting crushed there, how does this address that and prevent that from happening?
So I think you're referring to see the two black dots that are on School Street? Is that what you're referring to?
Yes.
The pipe that connects
Yeah.
the two? Those will be replaced as part of the project. So the pipe that connects that catch basin to the right, to the left, would be ductile line pipe, so that would be reinstalled as part of this project.
And be, is there any aspect of this configuration that prevents that from being run over by trucks and crushed again?
That's a good question. So the reason why it's being crushed right now is because when trucks are making the turn onto School Street, they're driving directly over either the edge of the curb line or the sidewalk itself. And what this does is it's going to force them to turn down Central Street and then make the turn up to School Street. So they'll be a little bit further away from that curb. We can design things and look at templates and things like that, but you know, if there's a distracted driver or if there's just someone that is just driving it poorly, we can't really control that.
Okay, and then, my other question was about the, widening of the, sidewalk from Masconomo down to the beach. And you mentioned that there are some encroachments such as fencing and whatnot. Now, are those, I interpret that to mean that those fences are actually on town land?
That's right.
Okay, they are. So how far back would these
So
have to go?
right now, we're just using mapping, Mass GIS mapping. There has not been a full survey or full right-of-way research done at those locations, so I can't answer the question right now. They are within the boundaries of the right-of-way that has been taken a look at and studied, but there would be further information that we would have to collect before I could answer that question. I'm sorry.
No, I'm just curious if there's a lot or a little, with the neighbors going down there.
There were two locations, I believe, that there were things that were within the right-of-way.
Great, so before we open up, I just want to reiterate sort of our process and what we're doing right now. So we've had our initial presentation a week or so, a couple weeks ago. Thank you for coming back because we asked for some additional options and an opportunity to look at that. We've also reached out and I believe have connected with most of the owners and people that are, as I call it, the direct impact folks that are there. The Downtown Improvement Committee had a very productive meeting this week talking about options and things like that. Where we sit right now is we are going out and looking at some bidding around these different project pieces because we know that from the initial date of 2017, those prices have gone up. We do have to care for the $242,000 grant that we have and make some decisions on that. We're going to take all of this information in conjunction with what the Downtown Improvement Committee has. I'm also suggesting that we put together our, I'm calling them the community impact folks, the people that are impacted directly on this to come together and work with the DIP and the DPW over the course of the next month to look at these additional options, continue with feedback, and come forward back with the recommendation through the DPW based on what we find in terms of cost, as well as what we find in terms of, impact and suggestions around that. I think we also need to care for the fact that all of our groups, planning boards, people like that need to be engaged in that. I want to make sure that we're covering all those bases. And I'll look to Sue and Greg to make sure that we give those in conjunction with that as well. So that the goal here is to take as many of the constituents, as many of the different groups who care deeply about this, as we all do, to come forward and have it be a public process that we can share, get some good information. The board will not make decisions on this until we see and hear from the groups that are out there as well as what the costs are. But we need to do that in a fairly, it's not another 6 months, it's within a month or so that we want to try to get that moving. So with that context stated, I'd love to hear from anyone here. Through the chair, if you want to take a mic and just share some information. Downtown Improvement, I know, is here. Other owners and people that might have questions, happy to take them at this point. Who would like to start? Okay, come on. Can you just grab a mic back there? Thanks.
Jody Morse, 11 Jersey Lane. So I have a question about the grant amount versus the estimated costs. I understand you're redoing those costs, but can you just give us some idea about what the gap is between what the grant is and what the costs are going to be, and whether you've already prioritized any of these intersections?
That's exactly what we're asking for right now. So they're going to get the bid prices of what the actual cost is versus what we have been granted. We'll look at that as we make the decision of what the differentials are. No, yeah, for the TV we need it,
Yeah.
sorry.
Just a quick comment on that.
You just identify yourself.
Oh,
please.
Jim Black, 19 Washington Street. Just a quick comment on your Washington Summer. I looked at this on the web, but I didn't understand the legend to the drawings. So now I think I do. That bulge that's right on that corner at Washington, on the Washington Street side, where you're widening the sidewalk, that's a parking place. And I think you put that up again. So what happens is commuters park on Washington Street. So in the morning, they park there quickly and they run down and grab the train. So that's a valuable parking place. I don't really have any particular interest in it, except that is a valuable parking place.
Hi, I'm Gar Morse, and we own a building on the corner of Union and Beach, yellow building. And I'm also a member, in full transparency, of the DIP committee. I have a few comments. One is that, in terms of process, we're a little out of sync from what I understand. DIP asked VHB to take the drawings and go back and try to make them more sensitive to pedestrian and bicycle usage, and to de-emphasize, and I'm going to use a bad word, get yourselves ready, bump outs. Because we're talking about a lot of bump outs here in these drawings. And I think, I hate to bring it up, but it's a sore subject. We also had a meeting last week, I guess, and we had some tremendously negative commentary from the public at large regarding what they perceived that we were doing, which is taking phase one, bump out in front of the post office, and stamping it all the way up Route 127. We're going to have bump outs everywhere. So I admit I'm not a big fan of bump outs. And I have to say, and this is going to be critical of VHB, and I should say I've paid VHB a lot of money over the years to design shopping center and roadway accesses for commercial properties. So I know, I even knew Bob Van Ness when he was at VHB, and Billy Roach when he was president of VHB, and so forth. So VHB is a very competent organization. But I fear that what we're getting for our money is one-size-fits-all civil engineering. In other words, these are good concepts. They were taught in civil engineering school, and they're being just imprinted on our town. We are a little different than Framingham or Winnetka, Illinois, or Sugarland, Texas, or Woodland Hills, California. We have a bit of a fragile kind of context. If we start doing one-size-fits-all civil engineering to our town, we're going to end up with something that's going to look a lot more like one of my shopping centers, which, they all make money, but I'm not sure that that's what we all have in mind here for our little tiny village. The second thing is, I'm a landlord. I care desperately about the survival of retail in this area. It has a lot to do with our context as a community, the way we feel about our town. You know, we're not just a place you get on the train and go to Boston and then come home. So we gotta something we really ought to think about here. And I don't really see that we're doing it much. I don't think we're providing a very sensitive treatment of the way we're redesigning our town. So forth. You can say, well, we're not really redesigning the town, and maybe that would be right. But we are changing the look and feel of our town. When the dip, it's a wonderful term. I'll stop in a second. Just a second. Had our last meeting 2 meetings ago. We asked VHP to go back and try to come back to us with some ideas that raise the sensitivity to pedestrians, the way pedestrians were treated. By the way, when you remove sidewalks, that's not good for pedestrians, okay? That means you're saying to pedestrians, we don't like you that much, okay? So removing sidewalks isn't always a good idea. The second thing, no?
I missed where we were removing sidewalks.
Oh, well, we're removing quite a few in this plan.
Removing?
There'll be fewer, I'm sorry,
Parking.
crosswalks.
Oh, crosswalks. Oh, okay.
Not sidewalks.
Yeah. Okay.
Got it.
Okay.
You're absolutely right. Crosswalks.
Okay.
So we never heard back from VHB. The next step was these drawings were presented to the selectmen. So the DIP has never really had a chance to look at the revised drawings and to comment on whether those drawings reflected our requests. So I have a lot. People talking about restaurants closing, shops closing. You know why they're closing? There's no place to park. Okay, they're losing business. So if you want a flourishing retail village, that needs to be a high priority for us. And the final thing, and I'll stop, is subscribing to federal highway standards is not necessary, okay? We don't even have to subscribe to the complete streets standards. People are going to be shocked by this. You can ask for a waiver. If you're a historic community, you can ask for a waiver from the complete streets standards. Federal highway standards, I don't know, I mean, I think it's a nice thing to think about, but I'm not sure why we're subscribing to, when Eisenhower did the highway system, he was a great president, but so I would, those are my comments. The final thing I would say is, if we have a 20-mile-an-hour speed limit, please don't tell us that we have to design our streets for 30 miles an hour. I'm done.
Okay, thank you, Barb. Okay, next comment in the back.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Al Setner, 72 School Street. I also am the chair of the Bike and Pedestrian Committee and have been involved from the steering committee in the Complete Streets process. So the process, I'm just going to talk a little bit about process first. It's been pretty complete. There's been several meetings. Our committee, the Bike and Ped, which a few members are here, has continually worked on this, or spoken about this, these projects for the last 18 months. So a lot of thought has gone into it. Parking is really a hot topic. It's kind of like dogs on the beach. And I understand it completely. And we do lack parking in town. Every study out there will show you that parking right in front of a business, people pull in, they go do what they have to do, then they leave. But if there's centralized parking somewhere, you have more pedestrian traffic in your area, that brings in more business. So I agree with the gentleman in front of me that we need to somehow find a way to do that, to have centralized parking, but not necessarily parking right and directly in front of a business. Because what that does is, if I'm going to go to Logan Insurance and I can park right in front of it, I'm going to go there, go in, come out, and leave. But if I have to park somewhere else, I may go over to 7 Central when it reopens, have some lunch, go to Logue, et cetera, et cetera. So those are things we need to think about, and things this committee has thought about quite a bit. Crosswalks. We've done informal kind of surveys as members of the committee on several crosswalks in town, and I can say definitively myself, I'm a walker also, like this kind lady over here. I don't call them near misses, I call them near hits. In front of 7 Central, at least a half a dozen times. In front of Barrett Realty, 3 or 4 times. Eliminating crosswalks that are unsafe doesn't discourage pedestrian traffic when you make the one that is 20 feet or 30 feet or 50 feet down the road safer to use. And I think looking at one of the designs for the Central School Union intersection, the elimination of one crosswalk, but the sight lines on the other 2 crosswalks being improved, actually enhances pedestrian safety. It doesn't say to the pedestrian, the walker, that, you don't matter. It's just that you have to walk 50 more feet to get your crosswalk, which most people, they might complain a little bit at first, but just like the 4 parking places that were eliminated in front of Down School Street, we all thought there was going to be a lot of pushback on that, and it turned out that everybody said, wow, this makes it a lot easier to navigate this corner. The sight line coming down School Street onto Central Union, right now, like the engineer said, nobody stops at the stop line. They pull out into the intersection because they have to. So, with that, I know we're at a real tight timeline. We have till June 30th to complete some of these projects, or the funding disappears.
Well, we have, based on where we are, we talked about this last time, if we can actually show good progress,
Right.
we're hoping we can put forward a little bit more of an extension on it, but we don't want to lose sight of the fact that we need to deal with this.
And my follow-up to that would be, we are, having gone through this is phase 1 of complete streets for the town. So we're eligible to start thinking about the next step. What are the next set of projects we want to apply for? What are the ones we want to look at? And if we fail on these, those disappear. That's my understanding. And then I don't know if we can do it, because it's a 4-year process, correct? Yeah, 4
So-
different years we can
Mhm.
apply for grant money. What effect does that have on years 3 and years 4?
Well, I think our goal right now, and we've learned a lot in the last probably 3 months about grants and process. And one of the things that I want to underscore here is, while we can't shift what we've done in the past, we can certainly make momentum changes for the future.
And learn from it.
And learn from it.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
some of the lessons learned include a lot of the things that we're talking about right now, which is getting the impact folks together sooner, looking at these more from a integrated standpoint by bringing bike, and we've talked about this before, bringing bike and pedestrian, DPW, the concerned citizens that are in the area, as well as the full public process, a little bit better detailed and defined. So I would say I'd like to continue this forward and use this as a priority, but also use it as a template for how we can start looking at the next range of opportunities that we've got. And I think a lot has changed in the climate of money and everything else in the last 3 years based on this. We have to be smart about, we don't want to get grants and then don't use them. That's not a good thing. But we also need to make sure that it meets the standards that we would like to see. So in answer to your question, we want to deal with this one, but I also want to put forward this process that looks at the future in a more comprehensive way.
And then the last comment, just as general FYI for everybody in the room, is that we also went through change of DPW director in the middle of this whole process, which kinds of slowed everything down,
Yeah.
unfortunately. But,
Yep.
so that's all I've got to say
Thank
about
you very
that, other
much.
than that, as a committee, we do support the efforts and the concepts of complete streets.
Thank you very much. Yep.
Gary Gilbert, 11 Magnolia Ave. I agree with a lot of things you just said. I really don't think it's fair to say one size fits all and that the engineers just didn't nuance their design. I don't think that's really fair. I think they thought this through. I think what we need to do is pick through it. I'm very much in favor of preserving parking spaces, but I'm also quite sensitive to pedestrian safety. And if a crosswalk's bad in a bad place, seriously consider moving it. Like he said, if one needs to go, but there's another one nearby and it's safer, we've had a win here. The DIP talked earlier this week, and they mentioned we articulated 6 or 8 specific points. I expected those to be brought to this meeting tonight. They weren't just negative, critical. They were suggesting the points of concern from the group. It was a good meeting, I thought. I don't know where those comments ended up. I think shorter crossing distances is definitely safer, but we can't do it everywhere. I think personally, I'm against most of the bump outs because of parking. But if we can gain more parking spaces in front of the library, if we look at each one of the bump outs, there may be some validity. This idea of turning the traffic as they're on, let's see, where is it? Is that Union Street? As they're approaching School Street, to turn the trucks and make them orient more towards, like they're heading to Pine Street, so that they're further away from the existing really tight turn there. That's going to be better for pedestrians. It's widening the sidewalk with no loss of parking space. You're just reorienting the traffic flow, and then they swing and go up School Street. So I see that as a gain, as a plus. By cargo, they talk about putting a bump out there to shorten the crossing distance. I don't think you lose any parking there. It's on the north side of, what is that, Union Street? Union, yeah. So we mentioned at the DIP meeting better signage. I think that's flashing beacons. Those are good things. Changing maybe the road materials, keeping it flat, but changing the materials. Painting the road. These are all things that improve pedestrian safety. I wish people were talking more about the end of Pine Street, because that's the most dangerous intersection in my opinion. But those issues could be brought into this, and each one of the bump outs should be looked at. And maybe a lot of them trashed, but some of them have virtue. So I'm just arguing in favor of that.
Jim Brown, 11 Beach Street. I am the property manager and managing member of P&A LLC, so I'm responsible for maybe 27 of the commercial businesses in the center of town. Parking is my largest concern with this proposal, and these parking spaces, whether they're in front or somewhere else, they're important. You can put a dollar value on every one of these parking spaces in terms of these retail companies. I was talking to Mari, who's been there for 45 years, and she has done that. And I wish I had the number, but she said something like a parking space for me is worth $5,000 a year, or $600 a year. And it's very important. And I also, with all of those tenants, you would think that I would have no problem with the team. My biggest problem is parking with my tenants. We have the 2 off-site parking spaces from 7 Summer Street and behind Cape Ann Savings Bank, and many people use those. I have tons of signage, spend a lot of money in markings. People use those to patronize other businesses. My tenants pay a premium for those parking spaces, and they're always complaining to me, we don't tow, we let the town use those. The more spaces you take away from on street, the worse that problem gets for my tenants. The next point that I'd like to make is, for the last 4 years, I've lived in the center of that town. My office is down there. I've walked all around that town. I walk over those complex that are there now. I've watched cars navigate around them. I've probably seen a dozen cars drive over those bump outs. At least the one in front of Richdale's. Right? I see people coming off of Summer Street, turning right onto Beach Street, driving right over there. I watched a little BMW actually go airborne into one of those spaces. The one in front of the post office, I see people driving over all the time. And I would argue that any bump outs that we go, that's the problem we're gonna have. Maybe with the exception of the C Street one, that kind of makes sense, that's a pretty good corner, and I think that could make improvements. I actually think the bump outs in the center of town, downtown Manchester, have made that area less safe for pedestrians, bicyclists, and vehicles. One of the things that happens is the bump out in front of Crosby's across the street from the post office. If somebody's parked in the space, one space away from that bump out, you have to do a 3-point turn to get into that space. And because there's a stop sign, cars pull in thinking they're going to make it, realize they can't, pull back out, and then the people behind them don't know whether they're stopped, take a right, or go straight. They start to back up. And the same with the post office. I see people trying to park in that first spot, and there's a car in the second. You cannot do it without driving over that curb stone. It's just impossible to do. We'd be interested to see the data of accidents before that was installed and accidents afterwards, if there was any net change in physical improvement or worse. If there was no improvement, even if it was net zero, I would say it wasn't worth doing. And people are going to drive over. Talked about the damage up on the end of School Street and Union. People are going to drive over. Everybody's on their cell phone. So whatever damage is happening now, that's going to happen as well. And this is permanent. You put these things in, and this is permanent. I think you really have to think about it. I would argue we should be putting this money into taking out the ones in the center and not putting it in. So parking is huge for me. I think we're trying to do something to solve the problem.
All right, thank you. Any other comments? Hands down. Yep.
Karina Gates again. We've lived here in this town, my family and I, more than 30 years. And when we first came, the town was a very serene rural town with a few shops. Everybody knew everybody. Everything changes. And we're trying to make everything perfect. I don't know why everybody expects perfection, out of something that we decide. And there have so many committees throughout the years that they did work hard to make things better. And every time another committee comes and does something else to make it better. And I don't think everybody will be satisfied. We cannot satisfy everybody. As long as it is common sense used, I know the people who own businesses would like to have their customers come and park right in front of them, but why not park further up the street? When we started having the parking on School Street recently, and they made the lines narrower to the side going up street, if you are walking in the rain, the cars are so close to the sidewalk, you get wet just by going as they drive. So that's part of making it better for the traffic and parking, but not for the pedestrians. If you try to go up the street where the Scout House is, and they have parked there on the side of the church and the rest of the houses, you cannot come down as you come down School Street. The traffic going up has to stop, or they have to stop for you to go. It's too narrow. So have we ever thought of, I think parking is important, but I think maybe we can create parking spaces away further instead of taking spaces in town.
We're actually looking at that
Yes.
this year.
And have
so
we
that's
thought
one
of
the things.
ever, it wasn't one-way streets when we first moved here, so many streets, but we're all accustomed and we all use them and we all don't complain. So have we ever thought of making School Street one-way street and Pine Street and take a lot of the traffic out? Then we have bicycle side to go down, and a lot of towns do it.
Mhm.
I think it will be worth a try. I know people will scream and who knows, but anyway, thank
Well,
you.
thank you for your comments. Thank you. Any other? Let's go one back there and then up to Andy.
Can I just ask a process question?
Yes.
Is there any way to do, maybe this has already been done, but is there any way to do a work session where
That's
maybe
what
this could be?
I said that earlier,
reminiscent?
Gary. Yeah, so that's okay, you missed it. No, we're taking some comments tonight. We're asking people to come together to do a working session with the Downtown Improvement Committee, DPW, to talk about this and get into the details. So we are asking for that. Who's got it? Oh, Mary? You wanna-
Mary Foley, 1 Pulaski Drive. Just a couple comments. My first would be I would urge the town to fix and repair our existing sidewalks before we add more concrete. I think more concrete is never a great solution. I do also fear that once the town takes grant money like this, the control over these areas, which I think was mentioned before, is gone. So we have to then abide by state and federal standards, which might not easily retrofit into our small town. I'm not a fan of the bump outs. I think they're very dangerous for kids on bikes, especially if there's a proposal to have tables outside of the old 7 Central Street, and also removing parking. And I do fear also that it would change the look and the feel of the town. We just passed the master plan, and overwhelming consensus was to keep the town character and the charm. And some of these definitely take away from that.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Anybody else? Andy.
Andy, behind you.
I'm going to defer to Ben for principal comments, but I do have a few. One is we need to remember that in DIP 1, the town can set the standard. The selectmen can set the standard. So looking for somebody else to set the standard is not a cure. I'm very proud of Manchester. I figure that I spent the summer before my birth on Singing Beach. And I've been here part of every year except for one when I was living in Germany. And what's important to me is that we make sure to bring the skills to bear, and that we not expect an easy answer. I had at my up hallway for my office for 19 years a sign which said, "To every complex problem there is a simple solution. Invariably wrong." So we have work to do. But one thing I know is that if all the people who park overtime in town were to stop parking overtime and were getting tickets, then we would not have the problem we do now. Many cars have essentially dedicated parking places. That's wrong. It's something that the police can be directed to change. That's right. And now I want to pass it on to Ben.
Alfred Rossi, 89 Bridge Street, also member of the EIP. I had no intention of speaking tonight, and I still don't. I would ask one thing: if people would pay attention to the statistics that the engineers have quoted about accidents, both pedestrian and automobile. And I would like to remind people that there was a very serious pedestrian accident in front of the post office prior to bump out. There has been no serious or minor pedestrian accidents in that crosswalk since the bump outs. Big point.
All right, unless there's any, we're running on a late schedule here. I'll take one more comment quickly, but I want to make sure that we know that this process will continue. Jim.
Thank you. First of all, they do ticket very, very heavily in the summer. I go up the street but I've gotten ticketed a dozen times. I go up and pay it like a man. They're very aggressive. And we've moved the times down on Summer Street to 1 hour now. And they're very good about that. The kids come in and they do a great job. Secondly, I was just wondering, the DIP had a vote, I think, at the last meeting, and they were going to make a suggestion to the selectmen. Did they do that?
No, not yet. We have, I think we asked them to work with the DPW to come back with the whole process once the bids come in, and to look at everything, because we're not looking at the numbers yet, so we want to see those things complete. So we understand that there was a vote, but they're gonna bring it forward with the rest of the members. Okay, anything else real quick in the back, anybody? Okay, one last thing, Al.
Thank you. Just one last point of information concerning automobile pedestrian crashes, which I did not realize there were that many at one of the intersections that the engineer brought up. But at 25 miles an hour, you have about a 90% chance of surviving that as a pedestrian. At 30, that reduces pretty dramatically. At 35, it's about 40%. So everybody knows that in this town, nobody goes the speed limit. And that's why we're trying to make these crosswalks and intersections safer, so that the chief of police, whoever it might be, the interim, doesn't have to go to somebody's parent or somebody's spouse and say, we're very sorry, but your loved one was just hit by a car and is in Beverly Hospital or worse. So I'll leave that.
Okay. So just to recap, so we're abundantly clear, the DPW is in charge of bringing this back to us. They're going out to bid on the different options. We're encouraging the Downtown Improvement Committee, the Parks and Rec. They could be involved in this, I guess, the Bike and Pedestrian, as well as, and I'm going to ask if you are interested in being part of what I'm calling this impact committee, to please send a note to Greg, our town administrator, so that we can get everybody's name on board that's interested in doing that. And to Gary's point, there needs to be some working sessions scheduled so these groups can come together and work together to go through the great detail that we had tonight with our presentation. Thank you. And work through these options with some of the good ideas that I know are out there. So I'm very confident we'll find our path. And I appreciate everybody's patience in doing that. Yeah. Okay.
I'm not sure it really depends on my second interview.
Okay.
Another open meeting.
Okay.
I, for the last meeting, I found out about the meeting.
Okay, so we're going to, let's do this, okay? That's not our purview. We have our standard place of where we do this. We have a Facebook page for the town that it's on. It's up in public meeting. We'll make sure that they're put forward. I think it's fair to say we need to do a morning or an afternoon or an evening session that people can come. But I hear what you're saying, but I want to make sure that you understand we have to put this forward through the town that we have, the town processes that we have. So we'll make sure we spread the word, but we'll do the best we can on it. Okay, I need to move on because we're way late on our topic here. Thank you very much for coming, and stay tuned. We'll make sure that we get a lot of information out for people. Okay, thank you. Thanks. What's that?
He's gonna need a minute, so it gets.
Yeah. I think we should do the interviews next.
Yeah, because I think they're both
And
here.
then, we'll go to the town.
Yes,
board.
yeah, yep.
We have 2 interviews to do quickly, and then we'll go to town warrant right now. Probably 10 minutes.
Or less.
Or less, yeah. All right, we need to bring, if anyone is leaving, we have to continue our session here, so, our next topic is, can we, if we're having conversations, can we go outside, please? Can we do that? Thank you. Okay, we have 2 interviews tonight for the Sustainability Committee. Nadia and Carly, are either one here? Come on up. Yeah, there's one. Maybe that's just it. Thank you for your patience. I'm so sorry we're running late. I know. Okay, if you want to just take the microphone, and so we're looking at building our sustainability committee together. We had Nadia who's going to share a little bit about your background information, and we'd love to hear that and why your interest is here, and we'll go forward with that. Thank you.
Is it a group meeting?
It has been one that's been up and running, and it was a short version. We had a smaller group that was together. It's actually expanding a bit more, and leadership has changed, so we're taking an opportunity to add some new people. Excuse me, Andy, Maury, can you help us?
Is that on? Sue, is that on?
Is it on?
Like that?
There you go.
There you
Okay,
go.
sorry.
That's okay.
Not used to using microphones. So I moved here around end of August 2016 with my family. I'm married. I have 3 children. And I'm also an attorney. I work as in-house counsel at a company called Applied Materials. And they're based in Santa Clara, California. But some years ago, we acquired Varian Semiconductor in Gloucester. And so one of the reasons I moved here is because we have the office in Gloucester, but more importantly because my role is global. And I work a lot with Europe and also with our headquarters in California. And I couldn't be in the middle of the Atlantic, but I found Gloucester, Manchester, got me sort of in the middle time zone wise, which helps. I, by training, am an environmental attorney, and I started my career actually at EPA Region 9 in San Francisco. And I've been at my current company for almost 15 years. And one of my roles in the company is supporting sustainability efforts. So I have been doing this for almost since I joined, although sustainability at the time was not as important. I would say it's becoming much more important now, whether it goes by the name of sustainability or now we see it as environment, society, and governance. Lots of different names, but at the end of the day, it tends to mean the same thing. I'm interested in learning what the town of Manchester is doing with respect to sustainability. I have ideas of initiatives I'd like to put forward. Actually, I was very heartened. I saw a sign, I think it was at Kayla's, indicating on Friday, I think there will be a meeting at the high school about some efforts to reduce plastic waste. And that's a topic I'm extremely interested in. I'm trying. Yeah. No, I want him, I want to bring my son. Because that's something that I care a lot about. The other thing is I have the benefit of having, I've lived in different countries. I've lived within the U.S. I grew up mostly in Maryland. I spent 17 years in California. Before coming here, my family and I spent 6 years in Germany. And one of the things that I found interesting is comparing, for example, the recycling rates, what gets recycled and how, of the different places we lived, just as a household. What does that look like? Also seeing on the efforts of a business to reduce waste, to improve recyclability. Energy efficiency is a big thing, and my husband's on the committee that relates to that. We put solar panels in our house last year. So it's, I have different ideas, but I would say I'm interested in first finding out what Manchester's been already doing, what initiatives exist, and then giving input on what are things that I think are important. But certainly I'm interested in seeing what topics make more sense given the town of Manchester's location. So for example, plastics, I'm very interested because a lot of it ends up in the ocean, and we're on the ocean, right? So I think that's something that people can be interested in. Reducing waste, I've seen the cost of waste go up since we changed providers. What gets recycled has changed, and I'm concerned about how much is going to the landfill now. Mondays, which is at least trash day where we live, seeing how much people put in their orange bags that really should be recycled. Are there things we can do about that? Because I think that will be a benefit to everyone in Manchester. You have questions?
Are you travel with your job? Would that impact your availability for the meetings, do you think?
I don't think so. It would depend, obviously, when the meetings are scheduled. I travel maybe 4 or 5 times a year, so I'm not traveling all the time. I was in Germany in January. I'm heading to California this weekend, actually, and then my next trip will be in May. So I would say I'm here enough. as long as I know in advance. There's some meetings I don't have a lot of input on in terms of travel. There are other times that I can schedule it and I can work around.
They still doing single stream there?
Sorry?
Germany, single stream, everything goes in and they use.
No, no. Actually, when we were there, we had maybe 5 or 6 different places we had to take trash to, depending whether it's glass or carton or plastics or what have you. Yeah. Yeah, no, we divided things a lot more than we do here. So, but, you know, each place has its own constraints, and I'm aware of that. But I'd like to find out what's doable.
I don't actually have any questions. I do have a raft of information that I could give you on in terms of the recycling, composting, and trash structure within town, including some of the challenges we have. But I don't think I need to take up our time tonight on that.
Yeah, I mean, I've just seen the handout, the flyer we get that tells us what we can and can't, and persuading my husband that he can't put it in even though he thinks it should be recyclable because instructions it isn't. He's German, you know him.
Oh yeah, I know Andre.
His own ideas of how things should be done.
Yeah, we should sit down. I have a lot more information about
I would love that.
whole structure. Yep.
I'm ready to make a motion.
I just want to comment that we're lucky to have you and your interests. We greatly appreciate that. I think you'll bring a lot of wonderful expertise. We've got some fabulous people that have been working on this, starting sort of ground up, and I think the time frame is perfect to bring in people that have had such a wide range of experience. So I want to thank you for stepping forward on that. So if we're ready to go, I would love to take a motion.
I'll make a motion to appoint Nadia Wetzler to the Sustainability Committee.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Okay.
I don't see Carly here, so let's just get to
Is Carly here?
No, I don't see her here, so.
Okay. That's all right. We'll move forward. Okay, we are now on to town meeting warrant. All set?
So we have a new draft with a few articles for you to decide upon. But I think we can probably walk through from the top and go down the list. I've got a couple of other copies here if people want to share, use. So, starting with Article 1, standard article, asks voters to approve the various annual reports. Article 2 is, again, standard article of asking whether or not voters will approve $0 for yours, for you as a selectman and for the moderator. And then Article 3 is the first dollar article. It is for the funding for the North Shore Agriculture and Technical School. And we do have a fairly significant increase in that budget, a little over 50%, because the number of students we are sending has increased, basically has more than doubled. We've gone from 4 students to 9 students. So our cost, therefore, has increased significantly relative to what we've been paying. It goes from $98,000 to about a little over $150,000.
Will our representative be available to speak to that?
I hope so.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's important. Yep. That's Jeff Delaney. Yep.
So yes, we need to decide which articles you're supporting, and I believe obviously the first one and second one you support. You voted for the third one as well.
Mm-hmm.
So Article 4 then is the either way, that'd be great.
Yeah. I just think it's important that he kind of give a little highlight of the school and our participation, because it is educational dollars, and there's always consternation over the school budget, and this is $150,000 worth of educational money, so I think it bears an explanation.
So then Article 4 is the general operating budget for the town. And the details of that will be in the Finance Committee booklet, which people will have. You don't see that in the actual article. It's a very generic article in terms of what the warrant has. Obviously, all the details are then in the Finance Committee report. Article 5 is the capital budget, proposed capital budget. There is a change from what you've seen in that we have included in the capital budget, item 11, the expense for the HVAC system. Previously, we were calling that out as a separate article. And we were calling it out as a separate article because it was being funded basically by repurposing the dollars that we had originally allocated to the LED streetlight project. We don't need most of those dollars because we were able to secure grant funding after those dollars were raised. Council feels that it's cleanest to just let those dollars flow into the fund balance and then appropriate the money from fund balance. It's just a little cleaner from a technical point of view in terms of what the steps required.
I think it'd be important for you to comment on that.
Yeah, I was going to put a little asterisk in the booklet on this one to explain why we have some of these monies available.
I think we'll also be at a meeting
Yes.
to be ready to do that.
So this line 11 was 75,000. So now we've added the 275, so it's now a $350,000 line, all for the same purpose for the for installing a new HVAC system in this building. And a few of the funding sources changed. We consolidated where fund balances were being used. So we pulled out larger items. So you see fund balance being used now in the road resurfacing, number one, for the message boards, which would be helpful to get right away. So fund balance dollars become available basically immediately after town meeting. The HVAC system we just talked about, the interior painting and interior renovations at the library, and then the largest amount is coming to fund the more aggressive water pipe replacement plan down on line 2028.
Oops.
Sorry. Yeah. So then on to Article 6. So the Finance Committee had a preference, and I think it's a good suggestion, to break out Article 6. Originally was a 550,000 altogether, which are being raised from a capital exclusion, but for two very different projects. One is a new ambulance, and the other is for drainage work, sidewalk and drainage work. So Article 6 has been broken into Article 6 and 7. So Article 6 is the 255 for the new ambulance, and then Article 7 is the 295,000 for drainage work, including the possibility of using some of that for the Central Street culvert project.
Just to be clear, the reason we're breaking this one out of the of Article 5 is that we're using a capital exclusion for it?
Correct. So it's contingent on a ballot vote come the May election.
Otherwise, they would be in capital. In
Correct.
Article 5.
Yes. So that brings us then to Article 8, which is the school district budget. And then Article 9 is the community preservation funds and the projects being funded through community preservation dollars. Article 10 is the article to seek funding for the 375th anniversary celebrations. That's a $10,000 request from fund balance. Article 11 is the funding for the annual appropriation for our other post-employment benefits trust, our OPEB. Basically, this is retiree health insurance. The trust fund for that to help reduce that liability. Article 12 is again, a standard article, basically asking for approval of the revolving fund in the Park and Rec program, meaning that fees that come in for programs can then be expended on those programs. And we adjust the spending limit up a little bit each year. Article 13 is a request to amend our general bylaw by making it explicit that electronic voting is permissible at town meeting. Article 14, and this is, we had talked about this, but I didn't have it in the last draft. This is an amendment to the general bylaws to require that all board minutes are filed with the town clerk. It's a general practice, but it's nice to have it codified. And similarly, I left out Article 15. We had talked about this before as well. This is adding to our bylaw, amending our bylaw again in the animal control section to specify that if you are late in getting a dog license, there's a progression of fees then that get assessed. So the later you are, the more you're going to pay. The graduated fine.
Just a point just occurred to me. Has the Animal Control Board already talked about Article 15? Are they aware of it?
I'll need to reach out to Christine to make sure that's the case.
Yep.
I believe she's been in touch with them on this, but I'll double check. Then Article 16 is a new article that we have not spoken about in a public meeting, and that is the Seven Gables Museum in Salem owns a very small piece of land at the corner of Overledge and Magnolia Avenue. It was gifted to them back in the 60s, I believe, and they would prefer to not own it. We don't collect taxes on it now because it's owned by a nonprofit entity. So they have proposed gifting it to the town. And the Conservation Commission is interested in having it as a piece of conservation land. It's a small piece of land. It's has a stream running through the middle of it, and the wetlands and buffers take up, I would say, 90% of the
So
land.
it's not a buildable lot.
It's not a buildable lot. It's not a buildable lot. So if you're so inclined to add this to the warrant, they would be appreciative of that. They're anxious to get it off their book, so to speak.
Seems pretty straightforward.
I think so.
Yeah.
We have a few more spaces to fill in there. I just need to get the details in terms of map and parcel number and the deed, book and page. But otherwise, it would be acquiring it by a gift and having it under the control of the Conservation Commission.
You want an official vote on that? Probably, yeah.
Yes, I mean, we'll want an official vote on all of these.
Yeah.
You can vote the whole warrant.
Yep.
So then we move on to the two citizen petition articles. Article 17 is the banning of various plastics from the foodware establishments. And so that's one you haven't taken a position on yet. And then Article 18 is the article, a non-binding article, again by citizen petition, asking voters whether or not we should continue to add fluoride to the drinking water. And again, you haven't taken a position on that. You've talked about perhaps taking the recommendation of the Board of Health on that. Backing up to Article 17, I think, Gary, you have some additional amendments or changes to the wording that you were hoping to make.
He needs the, Gary, you need the mic.
Hello? I've been reflecting on these changes, and there's 5 or 6 somewhat small things that could be put in to modify it to make it better. Generally speaking, I think it could be fine to pass it the way it is, but there's a bit of a process. This whole thing raises a process question. It's happened before. Before we get signatures for citizens ballot initiative, there's no opportunity, there's no process to pass it by. Probably it's premature for town council. That would be nice, but at least to pass it by Greg or the Board of Selectmen. I was guessing that the Board of Health would administer this. Greg has suggested the building inspector might be more appropriate. I'm in favor of the building inspector doing it. I've worked with him before on many things, and there's some, more than anything, there'll be some research required. I think any violations that occur are likely to be accidental due to the buyers for the businesses in town. This is what I've learned from talking to businesses and such. And it may take a little bit of research. And, I was researching something Black Arrow's using, and I was calling Washington, D.C., calling California. And I'll do that legwork. Maybe the Sustainability Committee could help too over time, but I don't see enforcement as a huge issue. But and I'm concerned about passage at town meeting at this point. The more amendments, the more clutter, the more people get bewildered. I initially, starting out with the changes to it, I initially said it would be Article 10 because I thought it would be the next thing after the plastic bag ban. But instead, Alan's pointed out there is another law there that never got a number. So maybe that law could become item 11 and we could be 10, as I've written in the proposal here, that it would be Section 43, Article 10. Alan, I think, has concurred that seems like a reasonable thing to do. So that would not require changing the petition. I agree that it would be good to change the language that supports the building inspector as the enforcement officer. There was an important point Alan made in, do you want me to walk you through this? Because it's not that much, but I guess I should. There was an and/or statement in the exemptions, item C, so C, subsection C. It said and/or originally, and I've just changed it to or. It's a lot more clear. And then at the very end, I think, well, actually, yeah. At the very end, I changed the section E. Town council was suggesting to make some changes that would be similar to the plastic bag ban, but in fact, those penalties were harsher than they need to be. I don't think we're here to charge $50 fines. We're here to get people to voluntarily comply, and I'm sure they will. This here gives people a month. If there's a mistake in something, correct it within a month. If the same specific product occurs in a violation, then you start getting fined. So I think with the text I gave you, Section E is a good idea. And then changing F so that it goes into effect 3 months instead of 6 months after passage, because I've seen no evidence that there's need for more than 1 month. So 3 should be plenty. The things I would not change at this point, if I have to print changes and hand it out at town meeting or something, to allow for an appeal. We'll see what happens over time. I kind of doubt we're going to even need appeals, but because there are alternative products out there. And to compel people to provide product information, that would help very much in researching, because as I started researching, sometimes the product itself doesn't give you enough information, and it was already approved by this famous place BPI in Washington D.C. that approves everything compostable in the whole country. They said, "What's the SKU number if you wanted to order it?" So I would need their sales receipt to figure that out. But I think we can probably survive without compelling them to give us their purchasing receipts. So I'm suggesting 1, 2, 3 real changes, which is the building inspector, the and/or language, and clarifying, or 4 changes, clarifying enforcement, and then the date it goes into effect. So it's not exactly as I've given you in the handout.
Okay, so are these changes that would go into the printed warrant, or are these changes that would be an amendment would be made on town meeting
They
floor?
can't go, Alan has told me they can't go on the printed warrant. So this is why I raised this process question. I assume that I'm gonna have to make a handout, 400 handouts or whatever, with, I was gonna have a one-page informational sheet. On the back side of it, I could list quite clearly what changes were from the submitted petition.
Okay.
That work?
Alan?
Yeah, Alan, there's a general problem with.
That better?
Yes.
Alan Wilson, there is a problem with making changes to a petition article. What the statute says is the selectmen shall insert in the warrant the subject matter of any petitioned article, which arguably would give you some discretion to change wording. It's generally the position of town councils across the Commonwealth and of town moderators and of our town council in particular that you can't do that. The better practice is to insert the petition exactly as it's stated. So although you might make the argument, town council would say don't do it. Gary and I have exchanged some emails, and he's very graciously incorporated a couple of my suggestions. The issue on the numbering of this isn't that Article 10 is incorrect. Article 10 is the large piece of the town bylaw that deals with police regulations and so forth. The problem is with Section 43. Section 42, as he said, is the plastic bag section. Then there follows that the section on construction noise that we adopted. That section is not numbered. So Gary took the next number in the sequence after 42 and called it 43, and it actually, we've got a renumbering issue. I don't think it matters whether we renumber the unnumbered section there as 43 or 44. I haven't had a chance to talk with Christina about it because that's really her bailiwick. I did suggest that the and/or language created an ambiguity in the standard for an exemption. I also suggested to Gary that the definition of undue hardship, which incorporates both unavailability of the product and financial hardship to the establishment owner, also suffers from that ambiguity, and he hasn't made that change. So I think there's still a problem with that aspect of it because you basically have got two different standards applying to the same thing. We can talk about that, Gary. So I've given him these comments not as a matter of substantive law, but as wording changes or wording difficulties that I think cause administrative and enforcement issues later on down the road.
Just as a point in question on what you just said about hardship, I always like the ability to have an appeal process. Wonder if, and maybe too far down the road, versus talking about undue hardship is to put something in around appeal so people that do have a hardship have a process to appeal.
Well, he has that in his draft.
Yeah.
The section C, small c, right now has a sentence at the end that says an appeal of his decision may be filed with the Board of Selectmen.
Second page.
Oh, I missed that. Okay.
But I think he said that was something he was going to perhaps leave out on town meeting floor.
So here's my question. What we have is this, which you gave us tonight, which is the different than what's in our warrant. Okay. And you're asking us to consider the petition modification for the warrant?
No, I think Gary understands that town council would not let him do that.
Okay, that's what I'm trying to get clear. So we cannot change what's in here.
That's
What we
right.
have to do is modify it on town meeting floor with whatever you want to do here. And what we're trying to do is identify the mechanism, the easiest way to do that.
And the way to do that is that, in my opinion, would be that Gary would have a written version of his, a written handout with his new version, which would constitute his motion under the article. So you don't need to make a decision on that tonight, because we don't have to decide on the form of the motion until we get to town meeting.
Okay. I just want to be clear what we're looking at. To be totally clear?
Alan, is what you just said, does that mean that the handout I print could say, change number 1, section C, subsection C, the wording is changed, should be changed to blah, 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 and then just write the whole short paragraph?
Well, I think there are two ways to do it. You could have a textual explanation of what the changes are, or you could just have your revised version showing the changes in bold. I think that's probably easier for people to understand.
Yep.
That's 3 pages times 400 people.
It's not violent.
You could probably print on 2 sides.
Yeah. Print on 2 sides, use a smaller font, whatever. No, but I think you're right. I think having it be in bold, because otherwise people will be shuffling between paper and it will just get very convoluted, so I think that's it. All right, so thank you for the clarification on that. So what we're voting tonight is what is in our actual warrant that we're looking at. These changes will be taken up at town meeting based on however.
Well, I'm not sure what Gary intends with respect to all of it at this point.
Okay.
And town council did suggest changes on a prior draft. She hasn't commented yet on this draft, so I expect we'll have other suggestions from her coming.
But for tonight, what we have to consider is what's in the warrant package.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then this is a continuing story based on that. Okay.
And you could, if, and since you're not seeing the final version tonight, you could make your recommendation on town meeting floor.
Which is probably what we're going to do. Because we can't, until we see the final and whatever it is, I don't think we can vote on that, so. Okay,
So just one more point.
one more point.
So we're happy to help with the printing of the new version, but before we go to that, I think we should have that review with Michelle.
Yes.
And see if there are some agreements that you would have with her potential changes.
Keep in mind, I don't always agree with everything she says.
I understand.
Yeah.
You have the final choice as to what version you want to present as the final version. That's your prerogative, but I just think we should have that conversation before we go to print.
Okay.
Sooner the better. And could I ask the selectmen, if they do choose to vote to support this, we would welcome one of you to maybe make a statement in support, however brief it may be.
We'll cross that bridge when we get there. I had one last question. I know one of the outstanding questions we had about this was whether you had the conversation with Crosby's. I know you had talked with all the other establishments. Have you talked with Crosby's about this, and are they aware of it? And
Yes, I have, and the manager here is not Mr. Crosby. All this goes back to
Yep.
headquarters. I talked with him. I bent his ear at length, to make sure I understood the nuances of it, the implications to him. He seemed like he wanted to scurry on to something else, but I made sure he had my email address. Hopefully, they might discuss if they have any issues. They discuss it ahead of time.
okay.
I've also spoke to Rich Dales, or I don't know, a couple places since I last saw you.
Okay. So
We do need to know.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just run through the last two more, I believe, or 3 more, 4 more. Okay, so that's 17. Article 18 is the petition article about the fluoride.
Yeah.
Added to the water as a non-binding vote. And then so the next article has been standard for the last number of years about the stabilization fund.
Yep.
Excuse me,
Finance.
Great.
I know, because we're about to delete it, I think.
But before we leave the fluoride,
Yes, okay.
there is a process under state law about which a town has to follow to eliminate fluoridation. I have not researched that fully, but I believe it is a town meeting vote requesting the selectmen to petition for a special act of the legislature, followed by an act of the legislature. If that's the case, the selectmen may want to think about whether they want to consider this non-binding vote as somehow initiating that process, if it's approved at town meeting, or what steps you want to take if it is approved. So that's, there's nothing you need to decide tonight,
Right.
but something to think about.
Yes, thank you.
So the finance committee voted not to put fund balance money into the stabilization account.
Right, yeah.
And so assuming you agree with that, then this just gets deleted. And that's why I chose to not change all the numbering, because I was anticipating your answer to that question. So assuming that we
Yeah.
delete it, then we go on to number 19, which is to seek dollars to purchase the electronic voting devices for town meeting. And then finally, Article 20, again, one we have every year, in case there was some additional spending, you might choose to use some additional fund balance in order to cover that spending.
Okay.
So those are the 20 articles. And so I just need to make sure it's clear when we go to print the Finance Committee report, which ones you're recommending approval.
Right.
I believe, 1 through, so 1 through 16, I believe, you recommend approval.
Yeah.
I'm reading the tea leaves. Tea
Yep.
leaves, number 17, you're gonna wait till town meeting 4 because we want to see the final version.
Yep. What do we want to do with 18? That's the question. The rest of them, it's really
Right.
what we want to do.
Yeah,
with 18.
I've come up with some more information on this, which tonight, but it actually specifically addresses some of what her comments have been, and many of her references don't necessarily pan out because she's just cherry-picked excerpts out of some of the articles, and additionally, the Surgeon General talks directly about when they discuss not releasing into sewers and waterways, the amounts that are put in our drinking water are very small amounts, and additionally, there is fluoride naturally occurring anyway, so the amount that we get is a very minimal amount in addition to that. I just feel that her petition so grossly misrepresents some aspects, and I would not be comfortable supporting that.
So I would, I agree with much of that. Part of the problem that I have with this article is that it contains verbiage which is designed to strike fear into people. And I prefer language which is precise and which describes rationally a point that somebody is trying to make, and this doesn't do that. So I also would feel reluctant to support it. I think taking no position on it is a possibility, but that has that implies that we are neutral on the topic, and I'm not sure that we are. So I don't quite know where I want to land on this. I understand the notion that this what we're trying to get here is to get a public opinion and not necessarily skew it with our position. But I feel that the article in question is intending and striving to skew it artificially in the other direction.
Am I correct to assume or somewhere know or read in notes that the Board of Health does not support this?
So that was
Question.
their opinion, boy, 8 months ago.
When the conversations
right.
began. Okay. Which that's what I thought, and we have professionals on the Board of Health that, in my opinion, know a lot more than I will ever know. And I'm more than willing to take their recommendation. And I also am a little conflicted to Eli's points as well. I asked the other night at our last meeting, well, if this is a non-binding question, why do we even need to make a recommendation? I'm not sure that a recommendation belongs coming from us. And we also haven't heard from them either.
Well, they
Once.
were here.
Once.
What is the,
So,
to Mufflin's point though, to not, so there's, it's so nuanced, right? I mean, if you don't make a recommendation, then you're sort of in a situation where you could be supporting, but if the majority of the board doesn't support, is it better just to say we don't support and allow the conversation to happen? But if we say that we don't support, you know what I mean? It's sort of the circular discussion. I'm trying to.
I do think, that to, I would like to acknowledge, that people should have a right as
Yes.
to what is, however, we can't do something that for one person or a few people that might be to the detriment of many, many more, especially when they can go and have that removed from the water through filters.
So what if we position, because I do believe this, I feel to your point that everybody has a right to have a discussion, and they've got the signatures, it's on the warrant, people should have that discussion. I think based on the professional opinion we've gotten from the Board of Health, in addition to the research that we've done, and we've had this at our meetings a few times, at least for what I can, and we will take a vote on this, what I get the general sense of is that we're not necessarily in favor of supporting it. And we just allow that discussion to happen, put ourselves out there relative to where we are, and that's where it stands, keeping it.
I think that's reasonable.
So, with that, do we have a motion or any further conversation about whether we support Article 18?
I mean, I agree with Becky that I'm one person. My recommendation isn't what someone else may agree with. Therefore, if I vote to recommend approval, I'm telling everybody that I think it shouldn't be there for them.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm struggling with, do we make a recommendation or not? Like the flip side, if we recommend to not, or we don't recommend the article, we're telling people that it's fine to leave it there. It's fine to leave it in the law.
Well, the point is, we can
I
make
guess.
comments about this, so we can be clear about our position. It's not like it's just gonna say it's not recommended.
Mm.
Somebody will stand up and have a conversation.
Yeah, and it is, we referred it to the Board of Health. The Board of Health, our experts, are the people who advise us, said, we don't recommend that. So therefore, we've been given the information we need to make our educated recommendation, is how I feel.
Okay.
We would be happy to take
Sure.
public comment if you would identify yourself, sir. Thank you.
My name is Jeff Bodmer-Turner, 89 School Street. When I read what I read about this, and and looked into it a little bit further. And I've been in past meetings when the Board of Health has spoken to this issue, and that the proponents of this issue have brought up this issue previously. So this is not my first rodeo with this. The question comes up in my mind is in the wording of this, and I would make some parallel to articles that show up in the state ballot, which are perhaps non-binding, just asking for voter input on a particular point of view or a particular issue. And the issue is written neutrally, and then the proponents and the opponents both get to make comments, and it comes out in that nice little red book, and we all get to read that before we walk into the voting booth, or in this case, before we walk into town meeting. This article is written in such a way that it's just the proponent's point of view, and the particular, if I may go so far as to say, biases of those proponents are written into the language of something that the town is going to vote on. And we know that the town votes on these things. The proportion of people who actually vote on these things is typically much higher, and without the benefit of any discussion of the nuances of this in town meeting. I'm not talking about the town meeting vote, I'm talking about the vote that happens afterwards. So I would be really concerned about the language of the petition itself, and would support your decision to not endorse this or not back it based on that language, and that you comment on that in town meeting. I'm very concerned about that as it comes to the use of public petitions. I lived in California for 16 years, and they started out with Prop 13, and I think when we left, they were up to about 140 statewide propositions that get down into things as fine as this issue. You don't want to lose touch with what town meeting is. And town meeting is an opportunity for us to discuss, learn, and make an informed decision. And I don't think as an electorate we make informed decisions. This certainly won't be the red book that comes out from the state on this question when it goes before the voters. So that's my comment.
Thank you.
If I could just make a related comment. You make a very good point. When we sit as town meeting, we are there not only as citizens, but as legislators. For that reason, I am not a fan generally of non-binding propositions on town meeting floor. I think it dilutes what town meeting is all about.
Can I speak to the point you made earlier about state law and the process? I know that the proponents of this have said in previous meetings with us that they've echoed that process. And I suspect that they think that the outcome of this vote would fit the bill for clearing the way to having the Board of Selectmen go and make that request of the state. But the more I think about it and the more I read this article, I'm not clear that this article, the language in this article conveys that is what the effect of this article would be. So I wonder, and I'm asking you your opinion on this. Looking at this through the lens of, does the warrant inform the average voter what the actual outcome of voting yes or no, or appearing at town meeting to vote yes or no on a particular article? Does the article, as stated, accurately reflect that is an outcome that a resident might expect?
I'm afraid the answer is I don't know. As I said earlier, I haven't researched that issue yet. I will, and I can try and do it tomorrow and get you an answer then. But my hunch is that the answer is no. I think that a request to the selectmen to initiate a special act process requires that it say that, and not that it say this is non-binding. But I don't know that for a fact,
Okay.
and I don't want you to rely on my unresearched opinion.
Right.
Okay.
I personally think that would be great information to have. Doesn't have to be tomorrow, but in the coming days, I think that would be very good information for us to
This is
have.
an easy one for me to research, because my research is going to consist of emailing Michelle.
Michelle. Yeah,
I think I can get you an answer pretty quickly.
Okay.
Well, that notwithstanding, is anybody ready to make a motion on this topic?
On this particular
Article 18, are we supporting it or not, or what's
I
the
would
motion?
happily make a motion not to support this article.
Is there a second?
Sure, I'll second
Any further conversation? All in favor?
Before, just to clarify, all right, does that mean you're recommending against it? Are you recommending a negative vote?
You're saying that we are not supporting this article.
It's not the same.
But I thought that's what we do. We're either in our, I'm sorry, maybe I'm misunderstanding. It's either the board recommends a yes, a no, or we make our decision on town meeting floor.
Well, I think the motion was not to support it. That's not the same as
Not to
recommending.
recommend.
a negative.
Okay, so the motion
I'm
needs
sorry.
to change.
Okay, you're right, thank you. I was reading it wrong.
So make a motion not to recommend the article
Article
18.
I re-second that.
I don't mean to be a nitpicker, but
No.
if you mean to recommend a negative vote, that's what you need to say. Not recommending it is not the same.
I'm happy to have nitpicking. This I'm learning. This is my jump in. Okay, so we're recommending a no. Okay.
Recommending that voters do not approve Article 18.
Okay. The Board of
Well, let's see,
Selectmen
do you-
are making a motion.
Well, let's see, so we're getting into this because we either recommend, we don't recommend, or we make our
Right.
recommendation on town meeting floor. That's typically how we vote it. So we're not saying don't vote, we're saying not recommend. That's usually what we do.
I'm not suggesting you do one or the other.
Okay.
I just want you to be clear.
Oh,
I want
We
you
get
to
to
know
town
yes,
meeting.
and
it's-
that's what
we know what it is.
I want. Okay, so
So the problem is the wording of the article.
Yes.
So the question is, do you want industrial sodium fluoride added to the public water supply? So your recommendation is to continue adding water, adding
Adding
fluoride
fluoride.
to the water.
Yes.
So if you want to continue to add fluoride, you say yes to the question. It's actually.
that's very confusing. I don't.
Do you want added, so do you want the fluoride added? If you want to continue adding it, you say yes.
Oh
to the
dear.
vote.
I think this is going to
So
be
it's
very
a-
confusing.
This is so confusing.
Right, am I reading the question?
you're reading it right.
I'm afraid you are, and this is going to be horrendous because
A yes vote means to discontinue.
yes, that's right. That's absolutely right.
And this is why we're getting tripped up.
Right.
That's exactly why we're getting tripped up.
I think, given that, maybe it would be best if we made our recommendation on town meeting floor.
Right.
I think that's exactly
Good
right.
idea.
Because then we can have the conversation, we can
Explain
make it
what
very
you're
clear.
recommending.
Yes. Okay, that's what we'll do. All right, so with that,
You need to,
we
we
approve.
need to vote that though.
I know we will, but I just want to go back and confirm that up through Article 16,
Yep.
we recommend. Article 17
Town
and
meeting
Article 18, we will recommend on town meeting floor. And
Approving the deletion of
approving
bold.
deletion of Article 16 is written here, and Article 19 and 20 we approve.
No, 20 is town meeting floor.
20, whatever. Okay, so we're good.
Do you perhaps want to make your recommendation on 19 electronic voting on town meeting floor? because we're testing that system
Ah,
at this meeting. So
yes.
if it proves to be a disaster, you may not want to.
We won't still be sitting there, Alan.
So we're going
Yeah,
to
we'll all
do
be
19.
going.
That's what those back doors
We'll all
are
be
for.
riding the same rail out of town.
Okay, good point. So 17, 18, and 19 will be recommended on town meeting floor. The others are yes. Oh, we'll do that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, no, we'll do it
Good
right now.
point.
Yeah, but we're just going, okay. But from that piece that we're good. So we now need a motion to withdraw Becky's initial motion, which
So
was
moved.
to, thank you.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so that is struck from the record. We are not making any motions other than to do it on town meeting floor. Okay. Wow, I'm glad we read that. Yeah,
Well, I think we've all read it
We
several
tonight, yeah,
times,
but I'm
but it
saying we
took-
understood to think about it. Okay. Okay, so,
So a final motion is in order to approve the 2019 and the town meeting warrant as amended this evening.
So moved.
Per Susan's
summary.
summary.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? None. Just when you think they're so easy. It's really confusing.
I looked at this warrant and I thought, wow, what a snap.
Yeah. No.
Wrong.
Unfortunately, Alan, this is the harbinger, right? This is the good litmus test before town meeting to see where we get hung up, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, everybody, for your comments. And, we have a few things on our consent agenda and correspondence that we need to follow up on. The consent agenda, Board of Selectmen minutes from February 19th, we received the updates per Eli's edits. So those are the ones we'll be voting.
I did have,
Did you have some additional?
yeah,
All right, so let's pull those out. We'll pull out the meeting minutes.
and I just need to get the, those are under,
While you're looking at those, the age and dementia friendly letter of support, Festival by the Sea liquor license, and the anonymous donation for 375th anniversary, and approved reserve fund transfers. Do we want to pull anything out besides the Board of Selectmen minutes? No?
Thought I had a question on the reserve fund
Thank you,
transfer.
Alan.
Thank you, Alan.
Night, Alan.
Night. No, I'm
So,
good to go. Oh, has Finance Committee already seen the reserve fund transfer?
They're doing those Wednesday night.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. Oh, this is just informational. The, on the electronic voting account is the reserve fund transfer that we're transferring out of, right?
That was a reserve fund transfer you've already done. So you've taken, so the one transfer that you have from the reserve fund is for the fall town meeting electronic voting expense. So I'm just showing, Andrew's just showing you the status of the budget. So it started out at 170, we've taken 16,559 out of it for that fall town meeting. You have a current balance of 153. And now if you take 45 for the lights and 15 for the bags, that'll leave you a balance of 93,000.
Right, information. Got it.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm done.
Okay, under, part 6 of the proposed capital budget change, well, it's under part 6, fiscal year 2020. And you go down to where the proposed capital budget change, and then the 5th paragraph down, which is the last one before full budget update. It says Mr. Beckman, and it should be Ms. Beckman, And then I wondered, the sentence itself reads, Mr. Beckman stated that this is a significant amount of work and was work proposed being shifted away from a different project to address this need. So you got a sentence and a question, is that right? Mr. Beckman stated this is a significant amount of work.
Right.
That's the statement. And then was work proposed being shifted away from a different project to address this need is the question.
Right.
I just, yeah.
Because the statement is
Just pull it out, it's two sentences.
two sentences.
One's a statement, one's a question.
One statement, one's a question, yeah, yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Just because I want clarification on that, if, anyway. Okay. So then that's all, that was.
Is that it? Okay. All right, so with that done, as amended, I'll take a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved. Second.
Any other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Correspondence. Letters from the Housing Authority, assessor letters, Xfinity update on channels, HDC letter nominating Rosedale Cemetery and Crowd Chapel to the Mass Historic Registry, the legislative breakfast, the flood map revisions, and a letter from Joe Sabella regarding flooding and police staffing. None of these are in a position to be addressed tonight, but I think there are pieces of each of these that should be brought up under subsequent meetings as we talk about the topics. So I would, particularly on some of the flood pieces, and I know Mr. Sabella is interested in hearing thoughts that we have, and that's what relates to that, and Rosedale Cemetery. So we can just bring those forward.
Yep.
All right, town administrators report.
You've already talked about police chief, obviously, so I don't need to add anything more there, though, I think it would be helpful if Ed and myself and
Yep.
you would do at a minimum, maybe all, we have sort of a strategy section.
Yes.
Schedule is difficulty with people's schedules, but if we can look at that at some point. Second item, we are dealing with a police union grievance regarding how overtime is calculated. It's rather complex with the Fair Labor Standards Act and what is counted as regular pay. So suffice to say that they've gone back and they're doing some more homework and clarifying what it is they specifically are asking for. So it's basically a stay tuned, but it could take a little while to get to it.
And do we have our
Legal counsel, yeah.
legal counsel?
On the senior center and the Cricket building, we are still waiting. So obviously, the more time goes by, the less optimistic I become. But I still would love to see something work out there. It was really a pretty ideal setup if it could come together. So we'll keep waiting. Hopefully, we will hear soon.
May I ask, last time you reached out and the last time you heard back? Do you know when that might be?
So that deadline has come and gone.
Say it again.
That deadline has sort of come and gone.
Oh, no.
So last time we reached out, he said, well, give me 2 weeks and I'll get back to you. And it's been probably 3 weeks now.
Okay. Thank you.
And then just was giving you an update on the HAC. They'll be scheduling a meeting. Originally it was going to be on the 20th of March, but I think they're going to do it on the 27th now. So the HAC will meet one of those two nights to develop recommendations to you concerning safety at off of Long Beach and perhaps some recommendations on the eelgrass bed as well. Though the Concom may be taking the lead on that more than the HAC. But that you should be hearing some recommendations from them by the end of the month.
So if they're meeting on well, we won't hear until April.
Right. Right.
So we won't be going to that meeting? Is that?
I'm sorry?
someone from us won't go, is
Oh,
that?
no, we should go to the meeting, but I'm saying
Yeah.
we won't hear a
You won't
recommendation
come
from
here
them
until
until
April.
Until
Yeah.
April, but no, definitely we should keep that.
Because if it's on the 27th, I would love to, I can go, and I
Okay.
would love to go. If it's the 20th, I can't. So,
Do you know, Sonia, if he confirmed buy-in on the 20th or the 27th? I think it was the 27th, wasn't it?
I don't know, the last I spoke with him, he didn't meet.
Right.
And so he would say, right, I didn't know.
All right, well, let's
So we'll
confirm
confirm with you.
and then let us know. Yeah, but we
Yeah.
should have Becky, if you can go.
That'll be
here.
publicized.
Yeah.
It's an open meeting.
well, I went to the last.
People can attend. I don't think they're going to be taking any public comment per se. I think they're going to be sort of doing it as a workshop session.
Yeah.
But obviously, it's an open meeting. And then lastly, just on the, some resiliency efforts going forward, how best to orchestrate that, I guess is my question to you, in terms of, you talked about really make sure we have more of a public process. So I'm not,
Well, I want to go back to who in town hall owns that? Is it a DPW function? Is it who is the person or the group? that
well, at
does
this
it?
stage, it really is more of a planning function, with Mary Riley and not in her role as grant administrator for us and doing the various resiliency efforts to date. So that's where it resides.
I think it would be good, just as a, and sure, see if this makes sense, that we frame up what we're asking. In other words, put a position up that says, here's what we're going after, here's the scope of the grant, here's what we're looking to do, right? I think having that out in the public relative to the website, the things that we're looking to put around it, invite people to come in, and if they have any questions or want to be involved in part of that process, is to connect them up with Mary and Sue, because it's a planning issue. And then, as we get to the next piece of this, I mean, it certainly will be the upstream of Sawmill Brook. We know the people that would be involved and impacted in that.
Right, that one's pretty clear.
Yeah.
If we pursue the storm barrier idea, how do we best
I need to do some thought
reach
about
out?
it.
Yeah, that's fine. I'm asking you to.
Yeah. No, I think we should.
Looking for some
give
feedback,
thought.
and
Yeah.
ideas.
Yeah. No, I think it talks to the point of how we kind of get that piece out, and we should formalize that process, so I'll make a note of that. Okay, good.
So I think that's everything.
Good. Okay. Anything else on the board?
Yeah. I'm wondering, is anybody going to go to the Massachusetts, the Municipal Association breakfast that they've got coming up on, do you go to that?
I tried to go to that. I think the closest one was Andover.
Yeah.
Yeah, not too far.
And then there's the Sierra Club is doing a statewide summit. Did you hear about that? That's on the, I think the 16th of this month. Yeah.
I missed that one.
Yeah, I haven't.
It was an email from Jacob Stern,
Yeah, I probably have it. I just haven't.
which is
Yeah.
this coming Saturday, not this Saturday, but the following. And I could go to that.
That'd be great. I'm out of town, but that would be great. And the legislative breakfast is what day, or what is the date of
That's the one in Andover is on the 22nd. It just sounds like it would be kind of pretty interesting.
Yeah, they are, like all of the area, cities and towns.
Yeah, and the focus
And
is
the
this one.
representatives talk about what's going on the state level and the impact on the cities and towns.
So I'll volunteer Sonia to help sign us up for that.
Yes.
So whoever wants to go.
Yeah, send a note and see if we.
Yeah, unfortunately, I can't do that one. I won't be here, but.
Yes.
Yeah,
First,
yeah, on the 22nd.
All right, last question, and I know that you can't be here on the 21st or the 25th.
Right.
We're trying to get all 5 of us together, which doesn't sound like it's going to happen. Do we want to keep the 18th, or do we want to move it to the 21st or the 25th? And it's either Becky or Arthur for the 18th, switches out, so.
You know, it might be good to have Arthur, you know,
He hasn't been.
because he hasn't been able to make some, so it might be better to get.
Could you do, what day could you do?
Either one, I guess I would vote for the 21st, just to give us a
Yeah.
little more time before town meeting, in case
Oh, in case anything else.
Yes.
something pops up or some information needs or
Yes.
whatever.
Yes.
Give us a little more time.
Yep.
Yes. So can we push that to the 21st? Take the meeting of the 18th and move it to March 21st. And in terms of the interviews for the sustainability, we can do 1 or 2, or we don't have to get them all done at once. So if we can move maybe 2 to the next and then 2 to the following, and spread them out. Yeah. All right, we'll double check. Yeah, whatever, that's fine.
And there's one more position available, because we voted 1 in tonight.
There's
2 more.
Oh, good, okay.
Oh, yeah,
You
we
made a
should've
comment
it
about
up.
expanding that committee,
Yeah, we did talk about it.
but I don't think we ever voted the charter says 7 is what's on there,
'Cause I
so.
think,
They need quite a few resignations,
Yeah,
and so Allison came back to me and said, actually, they only have 4 openings.
okay.
wow,
So, we just didn't have to.
maybe it would be good to expand that, because it sounds like there's going to be a lot more that's going to be involved with it.
When you expand in a committee past 7,
Yeah,
quorum becomes rather difficult.
true.
All right, well, let's see, confirm how many we have, and we'll do the round again, folks. And, yeah, we should have not voted tonight, we should have seen everybody first. Didn't think about that, but that's okay, all right. Okay, all right, I will, unless there's any further business, anything else? Anything else? Okay, I will take a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?